Hello, and thank you for joining today's demo Mobility Training Series session, Mobility 201, Productivity. This is the second demo in a three-part series designed to get you started with enrollment and policy setting first, then take a deep dive on mobile app management and content collaboration, and finally how to achieve full mobile maturity. My name is Kayla Heineman, and I'm your webinar master moderating today's webinar. Matt Shaver, our mobile master from IBM, will be walking you through the MobileFirst Protect, formerly Mass 360 portal, in just a minute. Real quick, just a few housekeeping items before we begin. If you've joined a webinar with us in the past, then you might notice we have a new look. We are using the On24 webinar platform to enhance your webinar experience. The webinar console is completely customizable, so you can enlarge the slides and minimize the Q&A box, so we hope you take advantage and play around with your console. This webinar is expected to last about 60 minutes and is in listen-only mode. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, so if you have a question you'd like answered, please be sure to submit it through the Q&A box located on the right-hand side of your screen. You can feel free to minimize this box if you'd like. And finally, we are recording today's session, and we'll make the link to the recording and slides available by email. Okay, so with that, I think we're ready to see mobile app management and content collaboration in action. So Matt, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kayla. Just give me one moment to share out my screen here. All right, so it should be good. Can you just, Kayla, give me confirmation that that worked?
Yep, we can see your screen. We're looking right at the On24 platform, and now we're in the portal. Perfect. Thanks, Matt.
Okay, excellent. So we're going to walk through some of the advanced configurations that we have available today surrounding app and device configuration and management. There are some very important features that we have launched within the last month, especially surrounding Apple devices, that are going to make app management and life easier for everybody in general when it comes to managing iOS devices. We'll talk about some new enrollment structure that we have for the Android devices as well, especially around the Samsung. So we'll start with the Apple devices. Apple with iOS 9 introduced a bevy of new features around application management that were really important and what a lot of people have been asking for a really long time. First of all, we'll start with the enrollment process. Mass 360 has supported for quite a while Apple's device enrollment program. For those that are unfamiliar, the DEP program, as it's commonly referred to, allows you to make the enrollment into Mass 360 a part of the activation of the device. This means that when users boot up the device as part of the as part of the activation process, they select the country, select the region, connect to a Wi-Fi network, and then it'll bring them to an enrollment screen. We call this streamlined enrollment in the portal, and all it really requires is a quick token upload from the Apple systems. So when you get your DEP portal access on the Apple side, it'll ask for a public key from us. You can see it's just a blue download link in here, and then we upload that token to the Apple environment. They give us a token ourselves. I think I have that under Documents. DEP token itself will be given into you. You can have multiple tokens, absolutely. Add it to our portal. Whoops, sorry, give it a test name. And what will happen is that after you add this token, you're going to see the number of devices that you have associated with it populate. So even before any device is enrolled, you'll get a list of the supported devices on that token. It'll show you serial number information, the make and the model. So this will be generally the information that's reporting back from Apple. And you can see I've got two devices on this token, so if I bounce back out of this screen here, I can see that there's one iPad and one OS 10 device. So we do absolutely support this for both iOS and OS 10. This is going to work similarly on both platforms. And what happens after this is that you create a profile. And the profile itself determines the behavior of the device when it's switched on for the first time and activated. The profile building is going to be the same for both iOS and OS 10. However, there are definitely more features right now available to the iOS side of things. So we'll just kind of view that real quick. Within the profile itself, you can see here we can require and force the MDM enrollment, meaning that the user has no option but to enroll when the device is turned on. And there's two ways that we can handle that. We can either make sure that the user is authenticating, or you can just kind of turn on the device and have it enroll automatically and then assign a user later. This is a lot more feasible for environments where users are like, well, I've got 280 iPads, and I'm the sole IT person, and it's my job to get them all enrolled. Now with this streamlined enrollment, all they have to do is turn on all those devices. They're automatically enrolled, and then with a simple spreadsheet, they can upload it to Mass360 and auto-assign all those devices to the users. Also important was over-the-air supervision of the device. This is kind of leading up to the application management that we're talking about. All of these new features that we are looking at for iOS devices in the advanced app management are going to require that the device be supervised. Traditionally, supervision was accomplished by taking the device, physically tethering it to a Mac OS X computer and running it through a program called Apple Configurator. You can still do it that way if that's the way you've been doing it. You have to stick to that. It's especially useful if you have Apple devices that don't qualify for the DEP program. So you can still supervise it the traditional way, but now with DEP you can do it over the air. It doesn't require that you physically tether it to any machines. Locking the MDM profile becomes very important because traditionally when users enrolled in an MDM service, they could just go under the settings, and if they know where to look, they could remove the MDM profile. Again, DEP only allows us to lock that profile to the device. And then as you can see, there are certain setup items that can be skipped. This is going to, again, be very important because if you're bulk enrolling devices, you don't want to have to go through all those individual setup screens. And actually, some of those you want to skip and lock down entirely now, such as the Apple ID. We'll get to that in a moment. But things like location services, restoring from iCloud backup terms of service, and the new Android method they have to pull over Android information will be skipped. The user won't see it. It'll just go right into that, here's your new iPad screen. So these profiles can be assigned to various different devices. You can use different tokens to group devices together and have their own individual profiles. It's a very flexible tool for that. Again, you can have one for maybe Macs, one for iOS devices, or even break it down further than that. All of the profiles, again, can be viewed, assigned, set as a default, deleted, or even edited if you need to. So once this is set up and you have the devices supervised, you have them enrolled in Mass360, we can also help you bulk assign those devices like I had mentioned if you come back to the enrollment screen. It's a little hidden now. Hopefully we'll make sure that now that this is going to be a more and more popular feature, we'll find it on the main menu page at some point. But under the Apple Configurator option, which was the legacy way for kind of bulk enrolling devices, you would tether, however many Apple iOS devices you could to a machine at once, and then bulk put our profile on there. And again, you can still use this method, but we also had a very nifty feature under here which allowed you to use mass user association. Basically set it up so that all you have to do is upload a spreadsheet with the usernames and the serial numbers, and the devices would become auto-assigned in the system. You wouldn't have to go through one by one and do that. All right, so once you've got these devices, again, either supervised via Apple Configurator or set up through the device enrollment program, we did add some new security features that were launched with iOS 9. Real quick, I'll go through that because this becomes very important to the method of pushing applications without having any kind of Apple ID associated with it. So if we hop over under security and go to our policies, we see now that under iOS supervised settings in an iOS policy, and if you're not seeing this, the supervised option in your portal, I'll show you how to turn that on in just a moment here. So we come under the supervised settings, and we can see there's a list of advanced features and functionality that were available if the device was supervised, including various features that launched on newer and newer versions of the operating system. Some were 7+, some were 8+, but now there's a unique one that's available only for iOS 9 and above, and that's called Allow Usage of the App Store. And as you can see from the text below, what this does is it takes away the App Store from the user view so they can't access it, but applications can still be pushed via Mass360 or iTunes or Apple Configurator if you're using one of those. So what will happen is the user won't see the App Store, but the MDM solution, Mass360 here, can still push applications and install them on the device. This is a supervised-only feature, and it is going to require in the future that to use this, all of your devices be supervised. If you'll remember, there was a setting under device settings, under the basic restrictions, which was called allow installing of applications. This actually shuts down the App Store completely and took away the user's ability to install applications from anywhere, including the MDM service. Apple has stated that they are deprecating this feature. They are taking it away from the non-supervised portion of the device because it was something that was, I believe, was always meant to be a supervised action. However, the MDM action predates, excuse me, sorry, there's a little interruption there. The MDM action predates supervised mode actually being on the device. So this is being deprecated. Keep that in mind. If you're working for an organization where it's going to be important to push applications without the App Store being active, you'll want to start getting those devices supervised and working with the new supervised feature. Some other things in here, again, Apple Watch pairing and things like that. Device name modification can lock that down. You can now remotely push wallpapers to supervised devices. Doesn't really have much to do with application development here, but allowing automatic app downloads and allow trust of enterprise applications. This allows users to trust new enterprise applications as they disable this so the pushed via Mass 360 will be trusted. Allowing automatic downloads of apps purchased on other users' devices. Again, now with supervised mode, we can turn that feature off. So what does all of this come down to now? What is the new big, ta-da with Apple and iOS applications? Pushing apps without an Apple ID on the device. And this brings us to the second piece of Apple integration that we're going to have, which is the volume purchase program. So traditionally, when you push an application to an iOS device through Mass 360, there was what was called user association. So there had to be an Apple ID on the device. That application would be associated with the Apple ID, downloaded and installed, but because the company had a VPP license associated with it, they could always pull back that license from that user's Apple ID, reclaim it, and re-push it to another device. What they launched with iOS 9 now is what's called device-based association. So now when we push the application, we're associating it with the device information, not with the user information. So that means that you no longer have to have an Apple ID configured on an iOS device in order to push an application down. This saves organizations with tons of corporate-owned devices a lot of time. Really, the setup process is extremely easy. The implementation is extremely easy. And it, again, requires that VPP association, and that includes for free applications. So you can see here I've got the Mass 360 for iOS app, and we have VPP licenses associated with it. Because now we can push the application down, it gets installed on the device, and it makes sure that there's no Apple ID on there. You can even use the advanced supervised settings to lock down account modifications so the users can never put an Apple ID on there. So from the VPP side, if you want to know if an application supports this, and I really don't think you're going to have a hard time finding, you'll have a really hard time finding applications that don't support this. We can log in here real quick. Make sure I can remember all my passwords. Okay, so the easiest way to see if an application supports this, and we can search Mass 360, for example. When you see the application in the App Store here, in the VPP App Store, as far as I know or as far as I've seen, this doesn't show up in the regular iTunes App Store. This is only in the Volume Purchase Store. We'll click on Mass 360 for iOS, for example, and there's a new metadata tag that they added with the launch of that feature. And you'll see right here on the app information on the left-hand side, there's a little field that says Device Assignable. Now, I've searched far and wide to try and find applications that don't support this now, and I haven't been able to find one amongst the big names, Google, Cisco, all that stuff. So you should be pretty in luck here in making sure that you can push applications from the public App Store without Apple IDs assigned. Of course, that you can still push enterprise applications through us, host them with us, or host them internally and point to the URL, and make sure that they can still assign those and, of course, download those instantly. Another large feature that Apple launched with iOS 9 as far as application distribution was concerned had to do with managed applications. So traditionally, when users had, say, you were using Box, for example, if you had pushed down Box to the user, and you wanted it to be a managed application because remember iOS has that feature where you can stop data from moving from managed applications to unmanaged applications and vice versa. So a lot of organizations want to use some very popular applications and have them be managed. This required that the user deleted the application first and then reinstalled it from the app catalog. This caused two problems. One, they had to delete and reinstall the application, and two, it deleted all the data they had in there currently, so they had to re-enter credentials and things like that. So application management now became easier. Again, with iOS 9, when you push an application, you have the ability to take it over and make an unmanaged app managed automatically as part of that MDM push. The user will see a prompt on their screen, and then they will be asked to make it managed to unmanaged if it is unsupervised. If the device is supervised, it'll silently take over and the application will become managed. So when adding new applications from the App Store now, again, with all this, all you have to do is push it. We'll say, again, for example, Math 360. It's already in the App Store, but we'll just show you the screen here. From iOS, we come under Policies and Distribution. We select the group, in this instance, all devices, and all you have to do is check that Instant Install button. And when you check that Instant Install button off and the application gets pushed down, it'll take the unmanaged application and either prompt the user to make it managed or take it over silently if the device is in supervised mode. So this is all very, again, easy to do. As you'll notice, the default method now for pushing new applications is to do device-based association. But let's say that, for example, you've been using VPP for a while now, as many people have been, and you've been using that traditional user-based association for a long time. How do I set it up now so that I can push this and make it device-based association? There's not a way to just simply take over that. But if the application is already in the catalog and it has those VPP license codes associated with it, you'll see now that you can push the two different license types. In some instances, if you've been testing this in a product environment for a little while now, or if you're listening and you're already using this in full production, you're going to have to stop current distributions, which can sometimes delete the application off the device. Just keep in mind here, you want to make sure if you had remove on stopping distribution checked off on the application when you had distributed it, if in order to do this new association, you're going to have to stop the distribution first, which will delete the application from the device. Now, we don't have this turned on by default, so if you just went with whatever the default distribution settings were, you're going to be okay. But all you have to do is red X out the device distribution. You can stop it pretty easily by doing this. It'll ask you to enter your password, and a lot of you might have the distributions based on individual groups. I just use all devices as an easy way to show this off. And then we just redistribute the application. And we'll say we want to do this again for all devices. And now I no longer want to do the user-based association. I want to do the device-based association. And we'll just hit distribute. And all the users will get a notification. And again, if these are supervised devices, it's going to be a silent install. And it's going to not prompt anything on the device. So you can definitely do this device-based distribution on unsupervised devices, but again, unsupervised always gives user prompts. That's very important to note. There's always going to be a pop-up screen where somebody holding the device will have to hit approve, and they can very well hit cancel at the same time too, and not actually install that application. So for the DEP supervised devices, you want the easiest setup possible, and now you've got it. You turn on the device, you activate it, you assign the user to the device, all of the applications are installed automatically, silently, no interaction, and no user can ever put their Apple ID on that device. So this is the new app distribution kind of workflows for iOS and a lot of the features that launched with iOS 9. We are launching another feature in our next release here very shortly related to DEP only. And I'm just going to talk about that because I can't really show it to you. It's not full production. But one of the features that a lot of people have been asking Apple for was to remotely push iOS updates. Users had devices, they were a couple of releases behind, and they were not updating the device, which was always left up to their hands. And this feature is not dependent on just supervision, but actual being a DEP device itself. So this is not something you'll be able to do if you're configuring devices with Apple Configurator or anything else. This is going to allow you to push the actual iOS download and then force the installation of it. This does not, however, and again, this is just generally the way that Apple works, this does not, however, allow you to stop users from updating. So they'll always be able to update on their own if they want to, but this will actually allow you to force them to update. And that's going to be very important as well as actual new applications come out that have security features that are taken advantage of. Examples here, we talked about a lot of stuff that works in iOS 9. There's a very real possibility that there might be other features in the future that would be dependent on iOS 9.x or 9.x.x. And then forcing those updates to allow those features to work would be supported with the DEP devices. So another thing here, just from the device view, and I'm going to pick on a device in a different portal here real quick because there's more populated in here. As you'll see, everything populates normally. We can see the iOS versions coming in here to an iOS device. Give it just a second to load here. Under More, you can see that there's the typical actions that we take here, adding and removing applications, releasing app licenses. When we're talking about the applications that we've installed and we've associated with a license, you can do the traditional selective wipe, which will take all the licenses back. But let's say that you have a device that's enrolled, and for whatever reason, I always like to use education here because I think they shift devices around the most. Let's say that you had a device that was moving grade levels. So we have an iPad that's in the 2nd grade, and we're moving it over to the 4th grade. We don't necessarily want to unenroll it, but we can release all the 2nd grade app licenses that are associated with that device, and then repush the new applications without having to do any kind of wipes on it. It remains enrolled, and you can change the information on it. So under the summary here as well, you'll see the apps that are installed, the app distributions that are available on this device as well. So when you're pushing out applications, you can see the specific distributions and why specifically it was a target of that, whether or not it was all member of all, or if we were doing it with a specific device or a specific group. With these app distributions as well, you can see whether or not they're installed or they're sitting in like a scheduled state. Scheduled means that we've pushed the app command down. We want this device to have it, but the user hasn't installed it yet. And again, this can be a result of the device not being in supervised mode or something similar to that. More recently here, however, we also launched a new application catalog view. The new application catalog view was something that was more in line with the way that the actual iOS App Store looks. I'll show you the end user view in a second, but it launched a couple of important new features in the new app catalog for iOS. Something that we call, going to the app catalog settings here, something we call featured apps. So the new app catalog view has basically 2 modes to it. And this is, again, right now, currently for iOS, there is a separate new app catalog coming for Android devices. Simple mode and advanced mode. So this is something now, if you have been a client with Mass 360 for a while, you can turn on. We did not force you into it. You might still be seeing the old app view. But if you come into the app catalog and go into the app catalog settings, and I'll just show you where that was one more time. We're on the main app catalog page. We go under More, and we go to App Catalog Settings. So with this, you can see the Enable New App Catalog for iOS. If you've been a client for a while, that's going to be unchecked. Again, we didn't force you into it. But if you just created a portal recently, this is going to be enabled by default. And there's 2 modes. There's Simple Mode, which, as you can see kind of from the screenshot here, is the user enters the app catalog, and they're just going to see the list of applications. Very similar to the classic view, but we added some more search functionality and sort functionality that made it a little bit easier. The advanced mode, which I'll pop up on a device in just a second, this gives you the more kind of detailed view here where you can see specific app bundles, you can see featured applications or featured app bundles, and you can do things like customize the banners and screens and what people are seeing on there. There's also the ability to update and kind of brand the application catalog loading screen. In the past, it said Mass 360. Now we defaulted to kind of a shield symbol, which you'll see in a second, which allows you to then, again, put your corporate logo in there and make sure that users understand this is where I'm getting my trusted apps from work. With these here, we added a new bar called Add Featured, which again, adding featured applications is real easy. If it's already in the catalog, all you have to do here is select different featured kits that you want to have. We put some defaults in there which are pretty cool. Starter kit, for example, here we have IBM apps. We have a welcome to the app catalog. And then you can sit here and save and add and change those as you see fit. And again, just adding new featured applications. We can select an application or a bundle. So if you've already been working a lot with the application bundles that we built out, again, going back to education, you can have some that are related to like science, social studies, things like that. If you're working in business, you can have your accounting applications, security applications, and build out those different bundles to allow users to more easily find what's appropriate for them. You give it the featured name, and again, you can build in your own image there and customize all of that. So what I'll do now is I'll share out an iOS device and just kind of show you what that looks like. And again, if it's something that, if you've been using Master 360 for a while and you're not seeing it, you can definitely turn this on yourself. Give me just 1 second to. And if you're a heavy iOS user and you've never used this feature in QuickTime here, this is again something that was a relatively recent development now. You can tether iPads and such to your Mac OS X computers and share them out without having to use a third-party program. Keep popping up. All right. So here's our iOS device, and you can see I've pushed quite a few applications through here. But when we come down, I apologize, this is going to be popping up. We come down to the app catalog, launch the app catalog. Just a moment here. Sorry, the QuickTime is lagging behind the device for some reason. So this is a little jumpy. I apologize for that. But as you can see from the screen there, there is the starter kit. There is welcome to the app catalog. So there's our banners at the top, and users can cycle through that. Below that, you get the sections, the latest apps, the most downloaded, changing app ID regions. Users can do things like pull up their menu and associate their Apple ID with the corporate prepaid applications if you're using the traditional method of it. Install the MDM app. They can change their user password for the Master 360 and things like that. So again, all very easy here. Great thing here too is that they can switch between the views themselves. If you're using this more advanced view, there's an apps view where they can just go in and see a list of all the applications. Also new to this was the ability to see just updates. So in the past, when everything was listed out, they couldn't really see any applications that needed updates. Here, we have an update section, and there's none available at this time. So if they were behind on a particular version of the application and for whatever reason they didn't have auto updates on, they could come in here and manually fetch those. So that's a lot of the Master 360 features and functionality that we've implemented with iOS 9. Again, really a lot of this is making life easier for iOS users across the board here. And I know that they have been clamoring to Apple for it for a long time, being able to push applications without Apple IDs on the device. Very, very important on there. The one last thing that I will mention, and this is kind of a niche use case, but if you're working with a lot of international organizations, as IBM is and does, there is a new feature now where we can have multi-token support. What that means is that, let's say that I'm in the United States, and my organization, we'll come back over here, go to my app catalog. My organization has ordered, let's see, I've got 20 available licenses for Spotify. Let's pretend that that's a paid corporate app. I've got 20 licenses for Spotify available on my US DEP token. However, over in Ireland, they've got 20 available as well. I've got 25 employees in the U.S. and 10 in the UK. So they don't need all 20 of those licenses. When I run out of my U.S. licenses, we can actually leverage the DEP token from Ireland to push the same application to the U.S. users, as long as that application exists in both app stores, meaning Spotify Music would have to be in both the U.S. and the Irish App Store in order for that to work. We can't push applications to regions where the application doesn't exist in their local app store. But we do have multinational VPP token support now. Again, a very important thing there. So, if you have any questions about this, there will be a Q&A session at the end here. I know we went through a lot pretty quickly here, and I do want to switch over to the Android side of things real quick. But make note of any questions you have, and we'll get those answered for you at the end. And I did promise one last thing. Under Setup and Deployment Settings, if you are not seeing the Supervised setting under your iOS security policies, if you go into the Setup, and again, it's Deployment Settings, you come down here and you see Advanced Management for Corporate iOS Devices. We just want to make sure that Set Up Supervised Devices using Apple Configurator is checked off. Some of the language here is obviously going to change, as this isn't necessarily just for Apple Configurator anymore. It can be used for DEP as well. But just make sure those checkboxes are checked off, and you'll be able to take advantage of those supervised features. So from the Android perspective, again, a lot of changes coming. We launched some features that were important to users as far as getting devices enrolled and managing the Mastery 60 application on the devices. We gave that the little tongue-in-cheek name of Android Configurator. Android Configurator, as you can see here, gives you the option to download the Mastery 60 application for Android or for Samsung without necessarily having to have a Google Play ID on the device. Now, the way that Google works currently, you still need to have a Google Play ID if you're going to be using public applications and pushing those to the device. Google has stated in the past that they have on the horizon a similar feature to Apple's VPP. I don't have much more information than that on it. I don't know what it'll look like or when they plan on implementing it. They've had one for education for a while, but to my knowledge has never been implemented with an MDM solution. But we created something here where you can actually just log into the portal, download the applications and the configuration file if you want to. So this is really nifty because you can do this in two separate ways. You can either just get the application on there and then go through a standard enrollment process, or you can kind of go through a pre-configuration where the device will actually show up in the portal as kind of like a shared device, and the user will have to log in to have the device associated with them. But it'll take care of most of the enrollment process for you. As you'll notice here, though, we do have two separate applications, Mastery 60 app for Android and Mastery 60 app for Samsung. With the way that Samsung's going to be working moving forward, they're actually going to go through a new enrollment process, which is called Enterprise Licensing Management, I believe, if I got that right. This will mean that in the future, moving forward, and if you create a trial today with one of our customer engineers on the phone, we can get all this set up for you. It's kind of in its early stages right now. It'll be something that'll be the norm early 2016. But the ELM enrollment means that you no longer require two separate applications, one for the regular Androids and one for specifically for the Samsung, to take advantage of those safe APIs. Now it'll just be an all-encompassing Mastery 60 app for Android. What will happen is that when the users enroll, and I apologize, I can't really show you this because I don't have an easy way on my Mac here to mirror out an Android device. But when you enroll the Samsung devices now, what will happen is they'll receive an additional prompt. And that prompt is a system-level prompt on the Android device saying, do you want to use the ELM management? And when they click yes, now those safe APIs are unlocked. If the users choose not to hit that for whatever reason, the device will still be enrolled. It will still be managed. It'll just be using the basic Google management APIs. So this ELM enrollment is going to streamline things a bit. It means that you'll have a singular application. And again, using the Android configurator here, you'll be able to get everything set up nice and easy if you want to avoid having Google Play IDs on the devices themselves. We see this a lot in industries where you're setting up, say, for example, in transportation. You're setting up devices, you're putting them in trucks, and the person that's going to be enrolling them is the sole IT person. You can just sideload this on into a SD card, put the application on the device, turn it on, and then sign into a user, a generic user, or you can have the individual user sign in. So for the Android devices as well, we do support some of the newer features that you're starting to see come out of the Android market and also specifically the Samsung market. So I'll start first with what's called Android for Work. Android for Work is something that Google created to kind of split the device down the middle. As opposed to being like an all-encompassing, this is all a corporate-owned device or this is all a personally owned device, you basically fracture it into two separate areas. And you say there's the work profile and there's the home profile. And what it is that you have, like, say, an application that's used heavily in work, and we'll go back to the Box example again. You can have Box on a single installation on the device. So from an app management perspective, this isn't taking up any additional space, but there's two separate memory spaces for it to operate, and they don't speak to each other. You've got the personal profile for the person that's accessing their personal pictures, and then you have the work profile. So it's a single installation of the application, two different profiles. And the Android for Work settings down here, you can see basically for this work profile, which again, when you're using Lollipop and above on supported devices now, there's not a ton of them out there right now, but we've been told more and more are on the way. But with the supported devices, users install just an additional MDM profile kind of on there, but they don't notice anything different on the device. So they don't actually physically have to go into a separate application or container to see all this info. All of these applications appear on the device next to all their personal information, but they're notated with a little lock icon that says this is the Android for Work version of this application. We can absolutely still do containerized information in there for you if you want to take advantage of our advanced security. One thing to note that this Android for Work is it requires the device to be encrypted. So there's a lot of Android users out there that love certain things that they can do with unencrypted devices. There's applications out there that take advantage of this and things like that, and there's a lot of tinkers in the Android market. So this will not work for them necessarily because, again, the Android for Work, you do have to encrypt the device, and that sometimes causes problems because a lot of users out there on their personal devices really still love to have the 4-digit password. If you're using a Samsung, for example, it forces you to do 6 at the minimum. Fingerprint scanners are making that kind of complaining obsolete, though. And then also you have to keep in mind that this requires some registration with Android. You have to get a domain to work with it. So if you're a small, medium-sized business, you don't necessarily have all that info at hand, you can create it really quick and easy. The thing here is that it's going to have a separate passcode. It's going to have its own separate security settings, making sure that they can't do like clipboard sharing from the work side to the personal side. There's its own unique brand of security restrictions, which are not quite the same as the basic MDM restrictions. You can see in there you can do things like disabling USB debugging. Also controlling the accounts, configuring account restrictions, restricted account types that are going to be on the device. Application compliance. It has its own application compliance, but you don't have to do blacklisting and whitelisting anymore because the work profile, you control the applications that they're going to be able to download and install as a quote-unquote work application. It's its own unique app store. The Android for Work App Store is something that, again, you control through Google systems, but you can here configure the whitelisted applications that you're going to allow them to use on their work profile, as well as required applications, again, that have to be on the device. ActiveSync, again, this has its own mail profile on there. It's going to be using kind of the similar setup to the native side of the device. So if you want to get the more complex systems that you'll see from the container, those aren't there. It's not really a good replacement for containerization. Again, we can still do containerization through the work profile there. But again, if you're doing kind of light, less secure work, you just like having that dual profile on there, you can configure the work email settings, ActiveSync settings to that profile, and then, again, remove it whenever you want to as part of the selective wipe when the user leaves the organization. It also gets its own VPN settings and certificate and browser settings on there as well. And this is, again, available for Google, anybody running Android, but again, it requires implementation by the manufacturers. Google has on their website a list of allowed devices, or I won't say allowed devices, a list of supported devices. It's pretty small right now, but again, it's expected to grow exponentially here as this kind of takes off and becomes their new initiative. Samsung has also offered something for quite a while now, and this has been around a bit, for Knox, the Knox container, where, again, you can do, from an application management perspective, some advanced controls there around app compliance, passcode setup, email, and ActiveSync settings on the device. This is more of a container, though. It's not like the profile that you would see for Android for Work. And this has been around for a little while. The reason this becomes important is because you have to sign up for it specifically through Samsung. They are going to leverage some of that Knox functionality in the new enrollment method that I talked about, though, and that won't require that you sign up for anything through them. It just means you have to have a device. For application management, though, from the Android side, one of the things that we kind of give people a heads up there is if you remember in the past with the advanced settings in in the device settings, with the application compliance, you used to be able to block applications from running on those devices. This was only supported up through Android 4.4. So for anybody running Lollipop or above, blacklisting and whitelisting now works more similarly to the way it works on iOS, where if a user installs it, we can notify you of it. We can relegate actions like a selective wipe, but they stopped allowing us to actually block it from running or forcing the uninstallation. The application catalog here is, again, stay tuned to that for the Android side because there is more information coming around that. We are going to be updating the look of that in the new year here, 2016, early 2016. We'll have more information of that coming. And again, if Google does add any kind of advanced features and functionality around kind of a VPP similar feature, we'll definitely support that. And you can see here that we support enterprise application, Google Play integration, and private channel apps for Android for Work. So that's the application management kind of from the device level, iOS and Android. As you can see in there, we do have support for Windows Phone Store. There's some new information, again, coming around about that. So with a future elevation, we'll do another one of these webinars that will focus around Windows 10 because there's going to be some AppX pushes there. As you know, Windows 10 is out. It's live on desktops and laptops and on certain flagship models of their phones. And, of course, we do absolutely support that. We support that for the laptops and desktops as well now, using the MDM enrollment methods. Again, that's kind of a separate webinar there, and we'll get to that in the future. One thing to note, though, that Master 360 offers from a security perspective, and you might have seen this in one of the policies I just went through, is what's called our Trusteer threat management. So iOS is not, quite honestly, a huge target for this kind of malware yet. I'm sure it'll get there. The security systems built into Apple and the way that it screens apps on the App Store are very good. But there are a couple of different pieces of malware that we can detect on there. And then for the more kind of open market-ish Android, is where it opens up and you see a lot of information that maybe becomes troublesome and becomes worrisome. So under our security policies themselves on the device settings now, we have what's called Trusteer threat management. And this allows us to detect malware, malicious application signatures, and things like that on a device and report it back to you immediately and do things like quarantine the devices, selectively wipe them so that they can't infect any kind of corporate information, whether that's via email or applications. But the Trusteer threat management is built into the MDM policy. So you have to have the MDM services on the device. This is not something that's offered in kind of like a standalone container environment, but it's really easy to implement. Basically, it's an on switch. You come in here, you edit it, you say, do I want to do Trusteer threat management on this particular group of devices assigned to this policy? The answer is yes, and you get the remediation action, which is either report the application or uninstall if it's rating like 4.4 or below. And the app IDs here, you can make app exceptions. One of the things that we found when we first launched this is that there are a lot of kind of bloatware and carrier applications that report malicious signatures, and there's really nothing you can do about it because there's no way to uninstall those applications from the system itself. It came on the device as part of the carrier build of Google. We can't do anything about it. So we do have exceptions that can be made on there when you find those applications so that they're not constantly reporting back as out of compliance for having, some carrier app or some bloatware app that was put on by a manufacturer. The Trusteer threat management, again, is for iOS and Android on there. There are some iOS things that come with tethering devices into computers where malware can get through. We can detect that. There's also advanced jailbreak and root detection. What that means is that the basic Master 360 application does, simple jailbreak and root detection, and most users that are out there use that method, so that's normally enough. There are more advanced jailbreak and root methods that are coming out that try to hide the fact that the device is jailbroken or rooted so it can get around MDM solutions and other security systems detecting it. Well, Trusteer can find those, and Trusteer can seek out those advanced jailbreak and root methods and report back on them. This is important, too, because Trusteer does all the updating on its own. If you have the Master 360 application installed on the device, you have Trusteer threat management. They do all the updating on the back end. You'll never have to worry about it, and you just keep up to date with the Master 360 application on the device itself. So trusted threat management is, again, something that has to be turned on by one of our engineers. If this is something that you're interested in testing out, please reach out to an account rep here, and we can go through getting that feature enabled for you, and you can test it on some devices. Because if you're a current client, we want to make sure that you, again, don't get billed for something you only want to trial. So definitely reach out to whoever your account rep is, and they can get that tested for you. One of the last things that I did want to talk about surrounding all of this, the application distribution, the device enrollment, and the security policies themselves, is going to be the actual privacy policies. And when it comes to applications, there's a sensitive amount of information on the devices. Users have personal apps on there. If you're running kind of that mixed bag environment, we do have privacy policies that handle on making sure that you're not viewing users' personal applications on their device. We're only looking into seeing what is being handled by Mass 360. So we can restrict app inventory information here, making sure that you're not seeing users' personal apps. We don't care. I know there's a lot of popular applications out there that are potentially embarrassing. People use apps like Tinder and stuff like that. They don't want their bosses to know about it. We do have privacy policies for personally owned devices where you cannot see an application that the user installed themselves. And you can handle these privacy policies based on device ownership information, so it's not going to be an all-encompassing feature here. It's going to be more or less say, all right, this device is tagged as corporate-owned. I can see whatever I please on there. I can see all the applications they have installed and all the app IDs. But if it's employee-owned, I'm only going to see the information that's pushed out for Mass 360 and installed via Mass 360. This means, too, for like the managed to unmanaged applications, if the application is unmanaged, you're not going to see it. But once you push the application through Mass 360 and the user agrees to make it a managed application, it'll populate, it'll become visible, it'll become removable by you. You can still remove that application. So this, again, very important. I know that privacy is a huge thing here, especially when you're working internationally. There are new international laws that come up every day that actually restrict companies from seeing this kind of information on their employees' devices. So that's a lot of the kind of advanced features there. I know it's kind of all around the board. We wanted to make sure that we covered all the important bits that were on there for iOS and Android coming up. And again, more and more of these webinars, keep an eye out for them because we're implementing some new and exciting features here very soon. That are going to be huge and important to MDM management on devices for both iOS, Android, and Windows phones. So if you have questions, please make sure that you get those into the Q&A section, and we'll start talking about all of that. And I'm going to stop sharing here while I review the questions in the chat, and I think that Kayla probably has some housekeeping notes for us.
Yes, thank you, Matt. So while Matt's taking a moment here to review any questions you have, and we do encourage you to submit your questions through that Q&A box. If you've minimized the Q&A box, you can bring it back up by selecting the, I believe it's a purple icon at the bottom of your screen. So you can go ahead and submit your question for Matt. I do want to take this moment to remind everybody that this is the second part of a three-part series. So the next session will be held in 1 week, on Thursday, December 17th at 10 o'clock Eastern. So that is the third session, Mobility 301 Protect. So we hope that you take a moment and register for that session as well. We'll include the link to register for that session in the follow-up email that we'll be sending out this week, which will include the slides and recording for today's event. So watch your inbox for that. We're going to dedicate the rest of your time here to questions. Matt, I'm not seeing a whole lot coming in. Maybe to kind of get the conversation started, we could start with some frequently asked questions. Is there any questions that routinely come up in your conversations with folks who are in a free trial?
Yeah, a lot of this generally surrounds a lot of the new features. I see that you went through a bunch of stuff. Say, Matt, I'm not seeing that in the trial portal that I just signed up for. You always want to get started off under the first two tabs under Setup. So if you've just created a trial environment, again, you can go to mass360.com. You create it for free. You don't have to put in any credit card information or anything like that. We do have customer engineers standing by to help walk you through all these features on a more personalized basis rather than having to go through a general broad webinar. I understand, too, that some people just want to do things on their own, so you can definitely go there and sign up for the trial. Under the Setup tab, once you've first created your portal, Setup Services is where you can turn on different features such as the secure container, enterprise email integration using our Cloud Extender tool. You can turn on the secure browser, secure editor, and all that good stuff. And then deployment settings is where you can kind of work with more of the integrated features that we talked about today, turning on the supervised settings, being able to set up default App Store regions for iOS devices, for example. But a lot of what I showed you, the things like trustier threat management, the ELM enrollment for Android devices, which again, we definitely encourage you to try out today. Those do require that somebody turn something on the back end and enable that feature for you. You can do that in one of two ways. You can ask for it through ops@fiberlink.com, I think. I don't know if that's changed to the us.ibm address yet. Kayla can keep me honest there. But it was ops@fiberlink.com was the original one. Of course, this is all changing to IBM systems. Or you can reach out, again, to an account rep, and they can get you on the phone with a customer engineer. They'll walk through everything for you. They'll get all the features, bells and whistles turned on. If you're an existing customer and you've been using Mass 360 and you're in a signed contract, please reach out to your account rep before you turn any of those new services on yourself, because we want to make sure that you get a trial period for it. And if you just turn it on and don't tell anybody, it'll get added to your contract and you'll start getting billed for it. So existing customers, please definitely reach out to an account rep. If you're trialing it now, you do have the option as well. Sorry, I had a couple of questions that popped up here. Yeah, so the question is IBM planning to creating an email proxy so that non-managed devices will be able to access corporate email? The way that we do that currently is with what's called our Cloud Extender. Our Cloud Extender, of course, relies on the Exchange accessing protocol being public-facing. A lot of organizations don't like to do that. I understand that, and again, I highly recommend that they at least try the Cloud Extender first to see how it works and how it competently prevents users from receiving information if they're not authorized. But there are still, again, a lot of secure organizations, both here in the U.S. and abroad, that want to make sure that their Exchange ActiveSync is never public-facing. So we do currently integrate with a number of reverse proxies in order to make sure that that happens. If you've got one set up, you can already use that. As far as IBM providing one, I want to say that is on the roadmap, but I don't have any idea of when the release date for that's going to be. In order to get that information, we'd have to reach out to someone probably on our product management team here, a little bit higher than my level. But I know it is something that has been tossed around, and it is something that they want to work on. Sorry, give me a second. When will we get the new web interface look? So this is a question from an existing customer. So if you've been a customer for a while and you're jumping in all these new features, and the portal that I showed you today is not the portal that you see when you log in, you've been a customer for quite a while. One, we appreciate you sticking with us, and two, we can most definitely get you on that new web interface. But again, that's something that we have to turn on behind the scenes there. We also want to get you on a call when we do that, preferably because the navigation is going to change drastically. We want to make sure that you can still find everything, you can still see everything. So if you're seeing that kind of legacy blue background view that's been around, this new interface that I showed you today has been around for over a year now, or over 2 years now. So we can definitely get that enabled for you, but please hop on a call with an account rep. If you don't remember who that is, you can just reach out to us via email, and we can find somebody for you. But definitely want to make sure that that's turned on. There's a lot of the new features that we're talking about here, especially as it's related to app management, hinge on you being on that view. So if you've been around a while and you're not seeing that device view that I showed you today, for example, or the app catalog doesn't look like I showed you today, a lot of those new features hinge on that. We can definitely get that enabled for you. That's about all I had in my inbox, but again, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out, mshaver@us.ibm.com, and of course this recording will be made available so you can review these features again and again, and we'll do more and more webinars in the future. I think that end of this year, beginning of 2016 is going to be very important, a lot of great new features coming, so stay tuned to these and we'll keep you all updated.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt, and thank you everyone for joining today. One more reminder to watch your inbox. We'll be sending out an email with the slides and recording from today's event, as well as the registration link to attend next time's session. That's Mobility 301 Protect on December 17th at 10 o'clock, so we hope to see you there. On behalf of us here at IBM, we hope you enjoyed today's presentation and have a productive and secure rest of your day. Thank you again.